You think you are a rational person who makes logical decisions with your wallet. You believe that when you look at a spreadsheet, you are doing pure math. You tell yourself that you buy low and sell high because that is the only thing that makes sense. But I am here to tell you that you are completely wrong. Most of the time, you are actually a biological machine reacting to ancient chemicals in your brain. You are not investing like Warren Buffett. You are reacting like a caveman running from a tiger. There is a hidden reason why you bought that expensive car you didn't need. There is a chemical reason why you sold your stocks at the bottom of the crash in 2022. And there is a mathematical proof that shows how your emotions are quietly taxing your net worth every single day. We call this the behavioral gap. And it is the single biggest difference between the rich and the average. Today, we are going to tear apart the psychology of money to show you the glitches in your own hardware. We are going to look at the data that proves why high IQ people often go broke. And finally, I will show you how to hack your own brain to stop losing money. Welcome to the emotional side of finance. To understand why we are bad with money, we have to look at how our brains were built. For 99% of human history, money did not exist, and saving was actually dangerous. Imagine you are a hunter-gatherer living 50,000 years ago on the savannah. If you find a massive pile of berries or kill a large animal, what is the logical thing to do? You must consume it immediately, because there are no refrigerators and there are no banks to store the value. If you try to save the meat, it rots or a predator comes and steals it from you. So, your brain evolved a dopamine reward system that screams, "Consume now," whenever you encounter resources. Fast forward to the year 2024, and that same biological wiring is a financial disaster. When you get your paycheck, your primitive brain sees a dead mammoth and wants to feast immediately. This is why saving money feels physically painful for so many people. You are fighting against thousands of years of evolutionary programming that prioritized immediate survival over long-term planning. We are trying to run modern financial software on ancient hardware that hasn't been updated in millennia. This creates a state called hyperbolic discounting, where we value immediate rewards significantly more than future rewards. $100 today feels real and exciting, while $200 in a year feels abstract and distant. This is not because you are stupid or lazy. It is because your brain is trying to keep you alive in a world that no longer exists. But the cost of this evolutionary mismatch is devastating to your compound interest curve. Let's dig into the most dangerous psychological flaw in your financial operating system: loss aversion. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky won a Nobel Prize for discovering something fascinating about how we feel value. They found that the pain of losing money is twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining it. Let me give you a specific example to visualize how this destroys your portfolio. Imagine you find a $100 bill on the sidewalk while walking to work. Your mood improves, your dopamine spikes, and you feel roughly 1 unit of happiness. Now, imagine you reach into your pocket and realize you lost a $100 bill. The anger and frustration you feel is not equal to 1 unit of sadness. It feels like 2 units of pain. Mathematically, losses loom larger than gains, and this leads to irrational financial behavior. Because we fear loss so much, we tend to hold on to losing investments far too long. We refuse to sell a stock that is down because selling makes the loss real and painful. We tell ourselves, "I'll just wait until it breaks even if the company is fundamentally broken." On the flip side, we sell winning investments way too early because we are terrified the profit will disappear. We lock in a small gain to feel safe, missing out on the massive long short-term compounding. This behavior is known as the disposition effect, and it creates a massive drag on your returns. Real market data shows that individual investors consistently underperform the S&P 500 by huge margins. It is not because the fees are too high. It is because they buy when they feel safe and sell when they feel scared. When the market crashes, the news is red, and your account value drops. Your amygdala, the fear center, activates. It screams at you to stop the pain, so you sell everything at the absolute bottom. Then, when the market recovers and hits all-time highs, you feel FOMO and buy back in at the top. You are buying high and selling low, not because the math changed, but because your emotions dictated your entry and exit points. Now we need to talk about why you spend money on things you do not actually need. Have you ever bought a new shirt and suddenly your old pants looked terrible? So you bought new pants, but then your shoes looked worn out, so you bought new shoes. This chain reaction of consumption is called the Diderot effect, named after the French philosopher Denis Diderot. Diderot lived a humble life until he was gifted a beautiful, expensive scarlet robe. The robe was so fancy that everything else in his house looked like garbage in comparison. He replaced his rug, his chairs, and his paintings until he was broke, all to match the standard of the robe. This is the psychological engine behind lifestyle creep, and it is the reason high earners often end up with zero net worth. We do not make spending decisions based on absolute utility. We make them based on relative status. When you get a raise, you don't just save the difference, you move to a better neighborhood. But now, your Toyota looks out of place in a driveway full of BMWs and Teslas. Your brain senses a threat to your social status, triggering a stress response that pushes you to upgrade your car. You are not buying the car for transportation. You are buying it to reduce social anxiety. This is an infinite treadmill where the goalpost for enough keeps moving further away every time you reach it. The math of the Diderot effect is terrifying because it attacks your gap, the difference between income and expense. If you earn 100,000 and spend 95,000, you are mathematically poorer than someone earning 50,000 and spending 40,000. The second person has a 10,000 gap to invest, while you only have 5,000 despite earning double. Status is an emotional game with no winners, but it has very real financial losers. Another glitch in our matrix is a cognitive bias called anchoring. This happens when we rely too heavily on the first piece of information we see when making a decision. Let's say you walk into a store and see a designer jacket priced at 100,000. You scoff at the price, thinking it is absolutely ridiculous, and walk away. But then you see a sign that says, "Sale 50% off," bringing the price down to 500. Suddenly, the jacket seems like a fantastic deal, and you feel the urge to buy it. But pause for a second and look at the actual math of this transaction. The jacket is a piece of cloth that probably cost $50 to manufacture and ship. The 4,000 price tag was an arbitrary anchor, set to manipulate your perception of value. When you buy it for 500, you didn't save 500, you spent 500. This anchoring bias destroys investors when they look at stock prices or cryptocurrencies. If a stock hits an all-time high of 300 and then drops to 200, you think it is cheap. Why do you think it is cheap? Only because your brain is anchored to the number 300. The stock might actually be worth $50 based on its earnings and cash flow. But because you saw the higher number first, the current price looks like a bargain. This is how people lose their life savings catching falling knives. In the stock market, they anchor to the past price instead of analyzing the current value of the asset. Companies and marketers know this, and they use specific numbers to hack your decision-making process. Every time you see a strike through price on Amazon, Your brain is being anchored. You might think, well, I'm smart, so this doesn't apply to me. Let me introduce you to Sir Isaac Newton, one of the smartest humans to ever walk the earth. He invented calculus and defined the laws of gravity, but he died with a massive financial loss. In the early 1700s, there was a hot stock called the South Sea Company. Newton bought in early and made a nice profit, which was a logical move. But then, he sold his shares to lock in his gains, feeling smart and secure. However, the stock kept going up, and all of Newton's friends were getting rich, while he sat on the sidelines. The emotional pain of missing out, what we now call FOMO, overwhelmed his genius brain. He bought back in at the very top of the bubble, investing nearly his entire fortune. Shortly after, the bubble burst, the stock crashed, and Newton lost the modern equivalent of millions of dollars. He famously said, "I can calculate the motions of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people." If the man who discovered gravity couldn't control his financial emotions, you have to accept that you are vulnerable too. This proves that financial success is not about IQ, it is about emotional discipline. The market is not a test of intelligence, it is a test of temperament. So, if our brains are wired to fail, how do we actually build wealth? The answer is not to try and be more disciplined, because willpower is a limited resource that eventually runs out. The answer is to remove the human element from the equation entirely. You need to build a system that protects you from your own biology. This starts with automation. If you have to manually transfer money to your savings account every month, you will eventually fail. You will have a bad month, or you will see a shiny object, and you will skip the transfer. But if the money leaves your paycheck before it ever hits your checking account, you never feel the loss. You cannot spend money you do not see, and you cannot miss money you never had. This tricks your brain into adjusting your lifestyle to the lower amount that hits your bank account. Next, you need to create rules-based investing. You must decide your strategy when you are calm and rational, not when the market is crashing. Write down a contract with yourself. I will buy 500 of the S&P 500 every month, no matter what. When the market crashes, you do not look at the news, you look at your contract. This is called dollar cost averaging, and it takes the emotion out of the entry price. You are buying more shares when they are cheap and fewer shares when they are expensive, automatically. Finally, you need to change your dopamine triggers. Right now, you get a dopamine hit when you spend money. You need to rewire your brain to get a dopamine hit when you invest money. Track your net worth in a spreadsheet or an app, and check it once a month. Watching that number go up creates a feedback loop of satisfaction that rivals the feeling of buying new stuff. You start to see your stocks as employees that are working for you while you sleep. When you visualize your money as freedom rather than fuel for consumption, the urge to spend fades away. The truth is, money is not really about math. The math is simply spend less than you earn and invest the difference. Money is about psychology. It is about understanding the ancient hardware running inside your skull. It is about realizing that your fear of loss, your desire for status, and your anchoring bias are trying to keep you poor. The system is designed to exploit these weaknesses, from the casino floor to the shopping mall to the stock trading app. But now that you can see the matrix, you can choose to opt out. You can stop playing the status game that has no winners. You can stop panic selling when the TV yells at you. And you can build a system that builds wealth automatically, saving you from your own worst instincts. Master your emotions, and the money will follow. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.